I have with me in the studio a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Jide Ologun. I won't be doing this alone as well. Theophilus is here to do this, but good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, too.
All right, so we'll look at the papers now, and we'll begin with the Daily Sun. South Africans renew attack on Nigerians, injure 4. Business premises burnt. And to the front page of News Direct, NDIC resolved distress in several banks, MD. On the front page of the Daily Trust, Nigeria's prisons remain same despite name change. Facilities still congested, inmates' welfare poor, mode of funding not captured in 2019 budget, website still old. To the front page of the Daily Times, how Maina siphoned 2.7 billion naira pension fund. Court orders interim forfeiture of 23 houses linked to ex-chairman pension reform. Others associates with proof to show cause within 14 days.
All right, taking a cue from the Daily Times newspapers, the blueprint is saying pension scam, court orders forfeiture of Maina's 23 properties. PRTT boss, son for arraignment on Friday, court orders forfeiture of his 23 properties. The Vanguard is saying state of Lagos roads terrible, says Jakonde, and says Lagos state government must do something about it. Held NPA, Lagos state government other responsible for Apapa gridlock, says Nupeng. Traffic robbers miscreants take over as task team fails. The Guardian is saying NLC vows to enforce new minimum wage payments. The writer says are going to review workers' pay as allocation drops. Minister wants more allocation to Labour Ministry. That's in the Guardian newspaper this morning.
All right, away from the headlines on the newspapers this morning, we will be looking at the 18th Annual General Meeting and 72nd General Assembly of the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, where heads of broadcasting organizations from different parts of the country will converge on TVC Communications headquarters in Lagos for the meeting today. Well, amongst the distinguished guests of honor is the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, who will make use of the opportunity to talk on the spread of hate speech and fake news and the dangers they pose to Nigeria's unity. This is what we'll be discussing this morning. You would recall that sometime earlier this month, the minister said that the fine for hate speech will be increased from 500,000 naira to 5 million naira. And then there were arguments back and forth with regards to this. People began to ask, what even constitutes hate speech in Nigeria?
Okay, legally speaking, hate speech is an attack that focuses on your gender, your race, your religion, and that can really bring serious harm on the people. And I will give an example. You recall in 2017 or thereabout, when in Kaduna State, a quit notice was issued to an ethnic group to vacate the state.
Yeah.
That can qualify as hate speech. But then the government managed it in a way because it could have led to a serious crisis in the nation. Even though it still did, it affected the business and things like that. And what this government has decided to qualify as hate speech is what we call feedback in communication, because you must have a message to pass across and you must also get the feedback. And that's why when you can claim to have actually carried out communication. So when people express their disgust at the state of affairs in the nation, I don't think it should be classified as hate speech.
But in expressing their minds about their issues concerning the situation in the nation, there should be some principles guiding their expression, shouldn't that?
Yeah, the principles are there, and like you just brilliantly mentioned now, the fines are there. But how many people have been brought to book? And it takes two to tango. It's not just about the speeches coming from the citizens, even speeches coming from the government. I asked a deep question. What can be worse than the speech of a governor, sitting governor, threatening body bags? We need to balance all these things. And the Chinese say that you cannot carve a rotten wood. So can we look at the reputation profile of the country? What gives birth to people expressing their anger? We call it emotional ventilation in HR. All right, so globally, hate speech has the tendency of throwing any society into deep crisis that may even lead to war. So there are laws guiding hate speech. But what qualifies an expression? A hate speech is what we're talking about here. I mean, recently also, a geopolitical business group came up and threatened a state, threatened governors that they must accept a proposal or else they know what to do.
And nothing
In
happened.
this country, the same group came up and threatened Benue State to ensure that the law that was promulgated against open grazing would be resisted. And you saw what happened. Hate action also followed. Hundreds were killed. You see, so these are issues. So I think there is a need for balance. In public relations, we talk about image. You have the wish image, you have the mirror image, you have the real image. The wish image is how you want to be perceived. The mirror image is what you see when you are before the... And the real one is... So what is our real image now as a nation? And we must, if you don't process feedback, you cannot be effective.
All right, Barrister, today is the Bonn conference starting today. Excuse me, the theme for this conference is Nigeria's digital transition, a panacea for economic growth. Now, how can the broadcast industry take advantage of the transition for economic growth and prosperity of the nation?
You see, it's so clear. Right now, we're in a global environment. And the Broadcast Organization of Nigeria came up as far back as 1973. And they have quite a remarkable membership. We are within the globe. I expect that information should be brought to the fore, and I must commend them. The broadcasters bring information to the government. For example, this government must have listened to, watched, or read about how Singapore migrated from being a poor country to a prosperous country. We have presented the case of Rwanda. We have presented the case of Tanzania. We have presented the case of South Korea. For example, you find South Korea generating about 62,000 megawatts of electricity power for a population of about 50 million. So how do you process this information? What is the essence of broadcasting? Bringing information into this space. All right? And rather than trying to witch hunt or whatever, learn from this. If you want to succeed, you learn from those who have succeeded. And of course, pointing the direction of the stakeholders to the enormous resources we have. And I think we have been trying in Nigeria, and we can only do better. But you see, like we say in consultancy, recommendations can be made. But what do you do with the recommendations? So we are also saying that if the government, for example, has promised to move 100 million people from poverty in 10 years, that means we have admitted that half of the Nigerian population is within the poverty bracket, and that is worrisome enough. Then you need to listen, you need to engage, wise counsel and information that can help you to achieve that. Are we talking about the case of the UAE, how that region migrated from being a desert to becoming a paradise? I mean, there are several things to learn.
We see our leaders travel to all of these places for
they
one
travel,
meeting
but I
or
wonder what they see, whether they see with eyesight and not insight. Because it's
now
a
those are
worrisome
two different issues. But then still talking about the digitization process, how beneficial can we use this in making recommendations, like you rightly pointed out? How beneficial can this be made, especially for consumers of broadcasting services in Nigeria? Looking at the meeting today in trying to set an agenda.
It's an improvement. And a wise man said the biggest room is the improvement room. And I want to say that right now we are engaging the digital technology. And I think the world is already talking about artificial intelligence at the advanced stage, and a lot of great things are happening. So I want to also advise that the government should see how agencies can be encouraged to ensure that we are globally relevant. I know that in the UAE, for instance, you have the a Minister of Artificial Intelligence, and you have Artificial Intelligence Academy. This is so that we can compete. But once again, I must commend the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria. You know, they manage about 250 broadcasting organizations, and then, you know, since 1973, they've come a long way, and it can only be better.
South Africans renew attack on Nigerians, injure 4, business premises burnt. Of course, that's in the Daily Sun newspaper. The News Direct says NDIC resolve distress in several banks. That's according to the MD. The Daily Trust is saying here, Nigeria's prisons remain same despite name change. The writer says facilities still congested, inmates welfare poor, Melder funding not captured in 2019 budget, website still old. The Daily Times says here, how Mena siphoned 2.7 billion naira pension fund. Court orders interim forfeiture of 23 houses linked to ex-chairman pension reform. Orders associated with proof to show cause within 14 days. The Blueprint says pension scam, court orders forfeiture of Mena's 23 properties. PRTT boss, son for arraignment on Friday. Court orders forfeiture of his 23 properties. The Vanguard is saying here, state of Lagos roads terrible. That's according to Jakonde, and that's in the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Now, the Guardian is saying here, NLC vows to ensure new minimum wage payment. The writer says a point to review workers' pay as allocation drops. Minister wants more allocation to labor ministries. That's in the Guardian newspaper this morning. So, away from the newspapers, we'll be talking about the Bond conference taking place today at TVC premises, and we have as the theme digitization, of course, the panacea for economic growth. Now, how can we use this to grow the broadcast industry?
Well, the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria conference is a timely development, especially now when the media industry is, as far as I'm concerned, battling with issues that borders on hate speech as well as fake news. I think discussants at the conference should harp majorly on these two, because the media will suffer a lot should the issue of fake news not be addressed. If it continues the way it is now, readers and listeners would no longer have confidence in what we say and what we bring to them. And when that happens, we won't have a place in the society, because the media is expected to set agenda for the public. And when you are expected to set agenda and you are the one not being believed, I mean, it's going to create a lot of problems for us as professionals. And then when you look at the issue of hate speech won't be popularized if the media is not the platform for it being spread. I mean, when people sit in their house and they conceptualize something evil, something not too good, they want to say about someone else or about something, and then they bring it to us. The idea of gatekeeping should play out there, and we should be able to sieve. Why we all believe in the issue of freedom of speech, we should also be conscious of what happens when hate speech is allowed to spread. Because, yes, people should be able to express themselves, but there should be limit to the evil we will allow people to do using the media. There should be, we should be conscious of the fact that we have vehicles.
All right.
And when you have a vehicle, what do you want to convey? These are things I think should concern speakers and other participants at the Bond conference.
Okay, Barrister.
Basically, when you look at broadcasting as a concept, the major mandate is to facilitate development primarily at the grassroots level, which has been cascaded to the global environment. And you look at the case of Nigeria, the first radio station that was established in Nigeria was in Ibadan. And that was 1939. 5 years later, in 1944, in Kano. And we've gone through stages. And the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria was put in place in 1973. I recall to cover that was when they covered the All African Games. Then in 1977, the first tag that we had. And you can see that opportunity to push the cultural values and the potentials of Nigeria to the global community that attracted investments and deep interest in Nigeria. So we have benefited. And if you look at the fact that globally, you need to market yourself. It's important that the broadcasting bodies help in promoting the potentials we have as a nation. And having said that also, to serve as an orientation platform, not just for the people, but for the government also. And that's why we appreciate those who go into deep journalism. For example, there's a trending news now that despite the fact that we have changed the names of our prisons, the nomenclature to correctional homes, some terrible things are still happening there. We need to focus on all this. And like Mr. Dari brilliantly mentioned, even though hate speech is not what we welcome, we also need the government to embrace feedback.
Okay.
Because sometimes what we classify as hate speech is emotional ventilation. People have expressions, and except we connect at that level, the development we so much desire may not come. And to connect us with great things happening across the globe. And we must commend about 250 organizations that are within the body of and congratulate them. You know, since 1973 till date, they've done well. And of course, you can only do more. And right now, they do direct to home, multimedia, digital and things like that. And we pray that they will bring the best practice that we have in the global community to bear on us, basically to develop Nigeria. So I want to advise that maybe going forward, we should focus more on the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and check what out of the 17 goals, which ones are really, really relevant to us. And one now that few nations can shy away from is the concept of climate change. You can see the flooding we are coping with in Nigeria now. So, and if all this comes together and the government recognizes the relevance of this body and act on the information that we push around, I think it should be great.
But in all of this now, one thing you all have mentioned is about the issue of fake news. At what point or how can traditional media, we have new media now, social media and the likes, how can traditional media stem the tide of fake news? Because when everybody talks about fake news, they look at traditional media and have the mindset that it's only that form of that medium that brings up fake news. But we have social media where everybody is a journalist now. As far as you're young, you have a social media account. So how can traditional media stem the tide of fake news?
That we can do through professionalism. It's not enough to say we are different from them. Yet now as it is, it's a we-them situation. Traditional media, core media, and then the social media, as I want to call it. Because the social media now has created for itself a media that is quite different from what we practice. Now, people will discern if we are professional enough. We have rules, we have ethics, we have principles.
And that's what differentiates us.
That is what will. It's not differentiating us now because to a large extent, we are also following the bandwagon. The traditional media must stop itself right in the track now. It is professionalism that will differentiate the traditional media or the core media from just the social media, because there in the social media, everybody who have access to a phone
or laptop
and can afford data is now a newsmonger. And what are they spreading? Beer parlor gossips, backroom news, unverified claims. That is where we are different from, because there is a process in the making of news. News are not just digital. We make news. When you go out there, you source the raw material for news, which is information. Investigative at some point. Deep-rooted investigations are the source of our raw material, information. It is that information that you process. by checking facts. Okay, we had this. How true is this? You check from all those concerned. Objectivity. The place of objectivity in the making of news is what is lacking in what you get in the social media. And for us to differentiate these two, it is for professional to ensure that they stick to the rules. When we stick to the rules and we play by the rules, we will soon be differentiated from every other form.
All right, let's have your take quickly, Barrister.
You know, the cure for bad advocacy, you know, in public relations also called bad advocacy, is advocacy. The Chinese say you cannot carve a rotten wood. So when we begin to put the reputation there out, good reputation that can be reported, we help. For example, let me make reference to our claim to massive infrastructure. And here we are confronted by bad roads and infrastructures. How do you report that without it appearing like hate reporting? So when we do the right things, we have the right report to present to the world. And I think that is why all the stakeholders should come together, like Mr. Dare said, to generate the quality news that will restructure our positioning globally as right-thinking people and people who are connecting with development out there.
All right, thank you very much, Dario Odufowoko and Jide Ologun. Thank you so much for talking to us on this.
God bless Nigeria.